Alright, build overview for my Perma-ish freeze Invoker monk build. This is like very much an experimental character that I just wanted to try some things out with and see how it would work. Basically, it's revolving around using these Cine Aquo, I don't know how to say it, gloves, and then some form of heavy CC, because these allow you to immobilize enemies much quicker, but the drawback is they take less damage while they're immobilized. Which immobilize is freeze, pin, heavy stun, electrocute. And specifically if you get a corrupted pair where you make the immobilize even sooner and you make the damage penalty less harsh. It seemed like a really interesting item and I wanted to try to make a character around it. And I thought about like stun, I thought about freeze, I thought about electrocute, just trying to figure out the best way to use it. What I landed on was freeze because it seems like there's just a bit more ways to invest into getting freeze built up quickly than the others. And I basically needed one ability to apply said freeze. What I landed on for that was freezing salvo, so I have a bow with freezing salvo, which is a skill that basically is bad for spamming because it accumulates essentially extra projectiles over time. But when you have it fully stacked up, it does quite good damage, and it has 50% more freeze buildup, which are both really good for us because, one, more freeze buildup makes freeze better. Two, you can't build up freeze while they're frozen anyway, so I don't need to use it while the enemy is frozen. So I can just let it recharge, and then when it's fully stacked up, it's like that, just a bunch of barrage projectiles that hit pretty hard and help freeze. And so I had landed on that, and then the second thing was how to actually do damage and kill the monsters and actually be a build that's playable and not just purely a gimmick. And what I landed on was quarterstaff. I tried some crossbow stuff, it didn't work very well. So the build at this point, I think looks pretty similar to just like a relatively generic quarterstaff build, and in reality it kind of just is. I just happen to have an extra button that I can press on bosses to freeze them really, really easily. Like I mentioned, it was just an experimental build. Is it a particularly good build? I mean, it's fine. It's not bad. But I think the reality of the game right now is that you'd be better off just making a build that does more damage. Why bother being able to freeze a boss 4 times in a row without it attacking when you could just freeze it once, maybe twice, and just kill it in that first freeze instead? But the build's fine. It's pretty much just a quarterstaff build. Fun for mapping. I tried to do some high max difficulty pinnacle stuff, couldn't perma-freeze those, but I can essentially perma-freeze map bosses. So I'll run a map, show it how it works, and then go over some more of the details here. But yeah, for mapping, it literally is just like I'm playing Ice Strike on a quarterstaff build. Which is to say, it's pretty good. Nothing like insane because I'm not fully invested. Ultimately, probably just a fully normal quarterstaff setup that gets a little bit more defense by not wearing unique gloves. And also I have a unique helmet on. I'm wearing the Sandstorm Visage, which I assume is from Trial of the Sekimas. I'm not actually sure if that's the case though. It was from Sanctum in PoE 1. Maybe it's just a global drop. I don't know. But the thought behind that was it basically builds up crit chance over time. And since I didn't think I was going to kill things all that fast and I would just have them frozen forever, it would give time for that to build up. Alright, here's the map boss. You'll see here. I can kind of stall out a bit. I'm going to curse him and then just switch to the bow. He gets frozen in one shot. And like, I have all the time in the world. I could basically kill him even in just this freeze. You can see that crit stacking up. But what's special, most builds can just freeze a boss right away. This one I can freeze again right after, when essentially the boss is resistant to being frozen, because if it's been frozen recently, it has a higher threshold. And you can see I can just kill it while it's frozen. It's pretty silly. It's fun to play against the map bosses because they just kind of have to sit there and they can't do anything. I was really hoping if it was able to do it against max difficulty pinnacle bosses, and I think it probably could. It's just it would take such crazy high investment because I kind of have the bulk of like extra freeze buildup type stats that I can get. So the way to make it better at this point was just be more and more damage. And the levels of investment it would take to get it to where it could like freeze in one go against a pinnacle boss at max difficulty may as well just invest in damage and instantly kill that boss in like 2 seconds instead, because that's kind of the just overall state of the game at the moment. You can kill those bosses so quickly with high damage investment. But maybe at some point in the future, like with different balance changes, this could become more relevant as a concept, because I can freeze bosses by doing very low amounts of their total health because of all the extra freeze buildup. And the fact that it only needs to get to 40% buildup to freeze them. So like, you know, a bunch of the high damage skills could be nerfed and it wouldn't really affect this build's ability to just freeze anything in sight. Yeah. That's kind of how it goes. I mean, I can shoot it at like an essence mob. Oh, never mind, it has tangibility. So I can't shoot it at that essence mob. Yeah, that's the build. That's how it kills monsters. I'll quickly cover the basics. I'm not gonna have like any build planner things for this, because again, this was mostly just a build experiment for fun. It works if somebody else wants to do this because it looks fun. Like I said, for mapping it is pretty fun. It's enjoyable, but I wouldn't invest into it or really worry about it for trying to do like high level bossing. You can, but you'd be better served just having a character with way higher damage or with really high tankiness. Yeah, the gear. Like I showed the gloves, that's the main thing. And then I just have like a pretty standard quarterstaff. I actually bought a pretty good one. And then Chaos Orbed it into having some lightning damage, which is really nice. The Sandstorm Visage helmet, enemies in your presence gain critical weakness every second, and that just stacks up to basically plus 10% crit base, which I assume it scales with your increased crit chance. I don't actually know if it does. And then I have a fair amount of like attributes, I think, on some of the gear here, because I needed quite a lot of everything to use all the stupid gems that I put in. So like I got an amulet with some evasion, some ES, some crit attributes. Ring with mana so that I didn't go all the time. And I actually have 2 unset rings because the Invoker node that lets us run or gives us extra spirit. I'm just running a boatload of auras and I actually was just out of gem space. I had to run 2 unsets. A pure evasion chest. This could have been evasion ES and it would have been probably equally fine. I just went for this. The other rings got some attributes. I grabbed an ingenuity belt for my other character just because it's an OP item. Nothing that crazy here, right? And then the bow swap is just, again, a bow where I didn't care about the attack speed. I don't need an attack speed roll. I just need high damage and ideally some crit. And I found that one for pretty cheap. And then I think I spent a lot more on this quiver than I did on the bow, which is flat damage, percent damage, and crit stats. And the passive tree, the Invoker stuff, I got the extra spirit, I got some extra cold, I got some extra lightning. These are just to do damage. And then ignore res on crit since we have a really high crit chance. Nothing that interesting, I think, here. Can I get weapon set 1 out? Yeah. The quarterstaff is just crit damage, ES, evasion, yada yada. Probably the abnormal thing is stretching down this way as a quarterstaff build. I would assume most of them probably don't come down this way this far. Maybe they do. I don't know. But the reason I did go down this far is because let me on the bow weapon swap, I wanted to be able to get these freeze buildup nodes and then the quiver nodes because the quiver nodes are broken. They're way too overpowered. But then in addition to that, you can see things like this extra freeze buildup here, this extra freeze buildup here, a little bit up here. And then I even anointed this node for freeze buildup and freeze duration. The jewels are kind of whatever. I got a couple rage on hit jewels and then just damage. And a against the darkness with chaos res because I had no chaos res. Yeah, it's the gems. I have the freezing salvo. This is the core of the build, like legitimately. the whole plan was the perma freeze, and I figured freezing salvo felt like the best thing I could come up with. So anything else besides the freezing salvo is just kind of you could put in whatever. I found quarterstaff to be the best thing to put in that would actually let you play the game. But the freezing salvo is supported by cold infusion for a little bit of extra cold damage, because again we don't care about anything besides cold on it because we just want to freeze. 50% freeze duration from deep freeze, 50% more freeze buildup from glaciation. And then hourglass gives it 40% more damage. Again, more damage just means more freeze, and it gives it a cooldown. But when I freeze with freezing salvo, it lasts like 11 or 12 seconds. And you don't need to press freezing salvo while they're frozen. So it's legitimately just off cooldown before they're unfrozen anyway, so it's just a really nice damage multiplier. And then I found concentrated effect, I think, actually makes it easier to overlap hits, because it tightens the spread. It also tightens the AoE, but it tightens the spread as well, and it gives a nice damage multiplier. And then really quickly, other interesting thing would be I have Hand of Chayula, helping me apply temp chains and freezing mark in one press. So the temp chains makes the freeze last longer, the freezing mark makes it easier to build it up. Then the rest is just pretty normal, whatever-ish. Monk stuff. I've got Ice Strike, Martial Tempo, Primal Armament, Crescendo, Ice Bite. This is mostly for clear to get the Ice Bite proc to make my Herald of Thunder able to freeze and do that Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice chain reaction. I got the Tempest Bell with Overabundance, Close Combat, Elite Focus, Charge Staff with Perpetual Charge and Rising Tempest. Then Herald of Ice with some damage, Magnified Effect, Execute, Innervate, Conduction, Herald of Thunder with Long Shot and Lightning Mastery. And then all my auras with whatever I could fit into them, like Wind Dancer has Maim and Blind. And like every aura support gem possible, because I just had extra spirit left over. And yeah, that's the character. It is a fun experiment. I'm not really gonna push too much further into it. I think I actually ended up spending way too much on the gear for this character because I just wanted to put stuff together really quickly and I overpaid for a lot of things. But all that being said, if you're playing like a quarterstaff build, like a monk or whatever, there's a chance that maybe it could be worthwhile if you don't have any weapon swap at all. If you could get like an okay bow to like implement this into just an actual regular build. And it might, I don't know how much it would actually build up freeze faster than if you just started going all out immediately with your damage. But maybe it's something that even a normal build could just put in to get like a slightly quicker first freeze on a boss. I don't know. It was fun to experiment with. Cool little idea. And yeah, that's kind of the build. That's it. Thanks for watching. See ya.